Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on just DC, I guess we'll say DC Studios because it's about stuff going forward, I guess. But anyway, so of course we're in the midst of the new DC Universe reboot under James Gunn that is not just covering film and TV, that's going to be the majority of stuff obviously, but it's not just covering that, it's also covering video games. Now at this stage we have no official announcements in regards to when exactly to expect the first video game, which are going to be, all be AAA games according to Gunn, or even just what the first game would be about or what character it would center on. But there was a big game that was hyped up a handful of years back that there hasn't really been much word on that many people were wondering about because they were excited about it. And recently we got an update on it with a pretty big side piece of information alongside it as well. And unfortunately it plays into a checkered history when it comes to Warner Brothers and their video games based off DC properties that aren't Batman or Batman affiliated at the very least. They always seem to happen, except there is one in this video we'll talk about that didn't happen. But of course, throughout the video, let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts about this. Were you excited about this game that's being cancelled? Were you not? Do you not really care? And also, what game do you really want to see under this DC Studios banner? What game do you want to see first, or just as a whole? What would you love to see? Whether it's a character, just a general story, let me know in the comments. And of course, if you want to enjoy the video, drop a like, it takes 2 seconds. So we're just going to use Variety's report on this because it's the best. I just took out the most key information from their piece and we'll read it out. Warner Brothers Discovery is making cutbacks to try to get its games business back on track. The Warner Brothers game division is pulling the plug on a Wonder Woman title that had been in development for more than 3 years. The open world game was in the works at Monolith Productions, which is being shut down along with 2 other studios, that being Player First Games and Warner Brothers Games San Diego. Warner Brothers had announced the Wonder Woman game in December of 2021, describing it like this. The single-player open-world action game will introduce an original story set in the DC Universe and allow players to become Diana of Themyscira in the fight to unite her Amazon family and the humans from the modern world. The development of Monolith's Wonder Woman game, or video game might I say, will not move forward, the WB Games rep said. Our hope was to give players and fans the highest quality experience possible for the iconic character, and unfortunately this is no longer possible within our strategic priorities. This is another tough decision as we recognize Monolith's storied history of delivering epic fan experiences through amazing games. In its statement on Tuesday, the Warner Brothers Games rep said, "We have had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises, Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. After careful consideration, we are closing 3 of our development studios, Monolith Productions, Player First Games, and Warner Brothers Games San Diego. This is a strategic change in direction and not a reflection of those teams or the talent that consists within them." The Warner Brothers Games restructuring was first reported by Bloomberg. So overall, this is actually fairly disappointing. I was like, the thing is that we never saw any gameplay. We just got that little like reveal trailer where they show, I guess, like the character design of Wonder Woman. But the overall thought was like, oh, this could be really cool. And like, a lot of people just thinking, okay, we'll think maybe like the Arkham games, but chuck Wonder Woman in there and with some better graphics and stuff. So it's disappointing that it's probably the biggest thing when it comes to like video games is that you can be strung along for 4 or 5 years and then it gets cancelled. Like with a movie and stuff, like a movie's not being made and then just gets cancelled after 4 or 5 years. Like you only have to wait a short period. But when you're looking forward to something, especially if you're a big fan of the character or just the potential of the game, it's really annoying. But I think with this game, the writing was sort of on the wall. There was no updates, anything like that. So either that means that maybe the product's not going to be good eventually whenever it comes out, which has been the case with some other games, or it's just going to be cancelled. So it went down that road. Now, of course, the big question about this is like, does the DC Studios thing have anything to do with it? I don't think so. I think there would have been a decent amount of money already put into this game, so it would have made more sense just to finish it if there was a potential to finish it, if they were happy with it. So I don't think the DC Studios thing has anything to do with it. But before we jump into the history of like the cancelled games, which sort of play into like the checkered history with DC Studios, it will be interesting to see if like this cancellation makes Gunn think, or Gunn and Safran or just Warner Brothers a whole thing. Okay, now we have to start pushing along and really start coming up with some ideas. But you can't rush them. Video games need to be, pretty well thought through and, produced correctly. Otherwise you will end up with either something that's not that good or it's glitchy as hell. So it just will be interesting to see what their strategy is moving forward, because I don't think they want to, like, it's like with the movies, like Gunn's like the whole green lighting thing. They don't want to keep announcing stuff and then it gets cancelled like we've seen with Wonder Woman and some of the other stuff we'll talk about in a second. So it will be interesting to see what they do. Maybe in the next, well, they don't have E3 anymore, do they? When do the Game Awards happen? That's like really when they announce stuff now, isn't it? I don't know. I have to wait and see when they maybe announce their first game, but they'll probably try and do like at least one where there's a decent amount of longevity to it. I don't think you can release like I don't know if they could get away with releasing just an Arkham game style thing, I think, for the first DCU game. But then again, maybe they could. But people want replayability, they want multiplayer, so it will be interesting to see what they do. I know people just want them to make like a DC version of Marvel Rivals, but I'd rather them try something else, but in that same vein. Like, it's, friendly for just the casual gamer to come on and play it. You can play with your friends. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But in regards to the history of the game's cancellations within the DC Comics brand, we actually have a few. There's some notable ones, like a lot of you might already know like one or two of them, but we're going to read out the most prominent ones. There were some where they had like, especially when it was like the late 90s, early 2000s, where there was multiple consoles, and some that were just made for one console originally because it was cheaper, and then they might port it or, redevelop it for another one. There were cases like that. We're not going to include them. Like there were some games that were made for like the Nintendo 64 that then were planned to be made for the PS or the PlayStation, but then that version was cancelled. But the Nintendo version still happened. That game still came out. But the first game to talk about is Superman Man of Steel. This is actually the last known working title of an open world action game featuring Superman that Factor 5 were working on for Brash Entertainment, which was being based around, of course, Superman. It was planned to be made for the PS3, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Wii. Its initial code name was Blue Steel, so that's really, if you type in Blue Steel Superman, you'll probably see some footage from it. And it was intended to be a tie-in to a proposed Superman Returns sequel, but however, the game had a troubled development and had to be retooled when the Superman Returns sequel was cancelled. Of course, Superman Returns is the Brandon Routh Superman film. Came out like the year before, I think, or the year after Batman Begins. They made almost the same money in the box office, but unfortunately Superman just didn't get a sequel for a couple of different reasons. In some of the footage, I might have showed a quick bit on screen. There's a clip of him fighting Doomsday, and then there's just some stuff with some flying animations. This is obviously like early footage. It's not necessarily like the finished game, but it looks pretty decent. Next up, in 2008, this is probably one of the more notable ones that a lot of people would know. Bottle Rocket Entertainment were working on a licensed game for The Flash with, once again, Brash Entertainment and DC Comics, but the project was cancelled when Brash closed this same year. The game was planned for the PS3 and Xbox 360. The game was cancelled due to Brash Entertainment going out of business, as we said before, on not before, but we mentioned Brash before, but it went out of business on November 6th, 2008. Now, this is one of the more notable ones. There's a decent amount of footage out there with it, and some people really like it, some people don't like it because it's like not realistic, but I like it because the Flash is a hard character to do realistically, especially in a video game. So they played into like the artistic ability and like the creative license there. So this is one that a lot of people know about. But yeah, this is the one that would have been really cool to see. But I don't know, will we ever get a Flash game? That's the big question. The second last one is Static Shock. This was a planned video game based off the animated show. It would have been literally a game in that animated show's world and based off it. And it was set to be released in May of 2004. And the thing is that this game was actually close to being done. It was like almost done, and then it was cancelled. Now, not much of the plot of the game is actually known, but it would have involved Static Shock fighting, or Static, I guess is the character's name, fighting various villains from the show, one of them being the Meta Breed. Now, the series itself, the actual show, was cancelled during or around the same time due to the merchandise not selling well, which sort of played into the game being cancelled as well. Just, you got to push it, advertise it, is it going to bring in money? So, yeah. But this was also like 2004, so this is like around the PS2 era and stuff like that. And they released a game for everything back then on the PS2, so surely they could have easily done this one, but we didn't get to see it didn't see the light of day. And the final one is a weird one, because you wouldn't think they would cancel a game like this because it revolves around Batman. Now, this is Batman The Dark Knight, and this was an action stealth game for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, developed by Pandemic Studios from September of 2006 until its cancellation 2 years later in October of 2008, and it would have been the first open world video game to feature the DC Comics superhero of Batman, and was based on Christopher Nolan's film The Dark Knight. In Batman The Dark Knight, the player controlled Batman, who could freely explore Gotham City, drive vehicles, and perform missions. Pandemic was given access to the film's script and other materials, and the cast was to reprise their roles for the game, ahead of the film coming out and stuff. Development was stalled when Pandemic staff discovered the underlying technology desired to create the game was incompatible with most assets. The publisher, Electronic Arts, or most people know them as EA, chose to cancel the game when it could not reach its intended December 2008 deadline. Now, this is interesting because, of course, I don't think Arkham Asylum was out by that point. So I think this might have been meant to come out the year before Arkham Asylum, but Arkham Asylum was an open world. Like you're in Arkham Asylum, and so that's a bit different. So yeah, this would have been that first one. It would have been very interesting to see if this game came out. Maybe the domino effect it has. Like, is the Arkham series as successful? Do people want more of this and stuff like that? It would have been very interesting to see that potential domino effect. So I don't know if you love the Arkham series. Maybe it was a good thing this didn't come out, but it would have been interesting to have like a video game and like, or video game connected and be set in that world, but also be open world and you can explore and they can show you how more villains would be represented in the Christopher Nolan universe. And you could even include other characters as well, like other heroes potentially. That would have been very interesting if they went down that route. They did release a Batman Begins game. I remember playing that on the original Xbox. I think it was the OG Xbox that I played that game. I remember I used to go to I first played it at Toys R Us when it was like they had like the video game stands and stuff like that, and I played it there. So they released a game for Batman Begins, so it logically makes sense that they'd also release, and I think that was actually fairly popular, so it makes sense that they would release a game for the sequel. But they're obviously swinging for the fences, and obviously they flew too close to the sun, I guess you could say. But yeah, that's all the cancelled games, or the main cancelled games in the history, or the checkered history of DC when it comes to its games. As I said before, it will be very interesting to see what happens with DC Studios and their games. I think, like Gunn said, they're still a few years away from it. I don't know. It will be interesting to see what that. If that's the case, that means they're probably working on it now. You'd have to think. Like, a game just doesn't get made overnight. Like, there's a lot of time put into that, especially a good game. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't know. I don't know what I would really want. Just something that's got replayability, but also not like stagnant at the same time. So I don't know. Fingers crossed they do something good. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you'd be awesome if you could drop a like and show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions and everything we went over in this video. Always curious to read what you guys are thinking. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.